Welcome to the deep dive. We're digging into a whole stack of sources today, really getting into the weeds on the 2025 NBA Finals. It's the Oklahoma City Thunder versus the Indiana Pacers. And wow, it's already given us some incredible moments.
Yeah, absolutely. This is, one of those matchups I don't think many folks saw coming. Maybe not at the start of the season, maybe not even deep into the playoffs. But here we are, two very different teams, took different roads to get here, and now they're battling it out on the biggest stage.
It's great. And our job today, like always, is to sift through everything, all the articles, the research, the notes you've sent over, and pull out the really key insights, the stuff that matters. We want to give you the context, maybe some surprising details, and the analysis so you can, really appreciate all the angles of this series.
And just to set the table based on the sources, after those first two games out of Oklahoma City, the series is all knotted up, one game apiece.
Okay, 1-1. So let's unpack how these two teams even got here. It feels, well, unexpected, like you said. First up, the Oklahoma City Thunder. Our sources paint them as pretty dominant this year. 68 wins in the regular season, best in the league.
Right. They were the powerhouse, top seed in the West. And the reports say they kind of cruised, well, relatively speaking, through two of their three playoff series before getting to the finals. Just really strong all year.
But the Indiana Pacers, that's a different story. The sources suggest their path was a bit more surprising. They won 50 games, which is solid, got the fourth seed in the East, but their playoff journey sounds like it was a real grind.
Oh, definitely. A much tougher road.
Yeah.
You look at who they had to beat. First round, it was the Bucks. Even without Giannis for some of it, that's still Milwaukee.
Always tough.
Yeah. Then they had to get past the Cleveland Cavaliers in the second round, another good Eastern Conference team. And then the big one, they had to take down their rivals, the New York Knicks, in the conference finals. That was a battle.
So getting through that, it's impressive. And the sources actually point out this makes the Pacers only the number 4 seed in NBA history to even reach the finals.
Exactly. That stat really puts it in perspective, doesn't it? Shows you what kind of run they've been on, the resilience they've shown.
It really does. And here's something fascinating the sources highlighted, a really cool narrative thread connecting these two teams.
Oh, yeah.
Both of them, essentially, built their current cores by trading away the same former star player, Paul George.
That is wild when you trace it back, isn't it? The sources lay it out. Those trades, years apart, ultimately brought both teams their current best players. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander for OKC and Tyrese Halliburton for the Pacers.
Let's follow that because it's like central to how we ended up with this finals matchup. So the first move, this was back in 2017, right?
Right. Just before free agency kicked off. The Pacers trade Paul George to the Thunder. And Indiana gets back Victor Oladipo and Domantas Sabonis.
Okay, Oladipo and Sabonis to Indy.
And then Indiana leverages that return later on. Sabonis, plus some other pieces, gets traded to the Sacramento Kings. This was before the 2022 trade deadline. And that deal is what brings Tyrese Halliburton to the Pacers.
Ah, okay. So Halliburton's arrival is like a direct result, a couple steps removed from that original Paul George trade from Indiana.
Exactly. You can draw a straight line, basically.
Now, on the Thunder side, Paul George actually played pretty well for them for 2 seasons, right? I remember that 2018-19 season. He was amazing. Finished third in MVP voting and Defensive Player of the Year.
He was fantastic that year. But, despite his individual success, the team performance. They lost in the first round both years he was there.
Yeah.
So in July 2019, the Thunder make another huge move. They trade Paul George to the LA Clippers.
And this is the trade the sources point to as completely reshaping the Thunder. This is where they got their haul.
Oh, it was massive.
Okay.
For Paul George, OKC gets back Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Danilo Gallinari, 5 first-round draft picks, plus the rights to swap 2 other first-round picks.
5 firsts and 2 swaps? That's incredible.
Just a treasure trove of draft capital. And the sources explicitly mentioned one of those picks they got became Jalen Williams, who's obviously a huge piece for them right now.
So you look back, and both teams kind of hit the jackpot trading the same guy just at different times and in different ways. And now here they are. It's a pretty cool backstory.
It really is a fascinating bit of NBA history playing out.
Okay, shifting gears a bit. One source brings up the whole market size thing with this series. OKC and Indianapolis aren't exactly LA or New York.
Yeah, the Nielsen data cited puts OKC as the nation's 47th ranked TV market and Indianapolis is 25th. And this is framed, in the context of the NBA wanting parity competitive balance.
Right. The argument in the source is basically that seeing teams from markets like these succeed, make the finals, It's actually a good thing for the league overall.
Yeah. The idea is it shows that success isn't just confined to the biggest cities or the teams with the longest histories. It can, potentially grow the fan base everywhere if any team feels like they have a shot.
So maybe the focus on parity, which things like the salary cap and the draft are supposed to encourage, maybe that outweighs any potential concerns about lower national TV ratings, which apparently have been a bit of a topic, especially after Game 2.
That seems to be the suggestion.
Yeah.
And one source even called this the lowest payroll finals in years, which kind of reinforces that idea. It's about smart team building, maybe not just outspending everyone.
Interesting point about the health of the league. Okay, so that sets the stage. Two teams, linked by a trade, different paths, defying maybe some market expectations. Let's get into the games themselves. Game 1, back in OKC. What happened?
Game 1 was just wild, a nail-biter. The Thunder, they came out really strong at home, jumped out to a lead. Their defense, especially in the first half, was just suffocating. They forced Indiana into 19 turnovers.
19 turnovers in one half. That's staggering, especially for a Pacers team usually known for taking care of the ball.
Yeah, the source said it was actually a finals record for turnovers in a half. So that defensive pressure helped OKC build up a pretty comfortable lead, 57-45 at halftime. Looked like maybe they were going to cruise.
But the Pacers, we mentioned their resilience. They didn't fold.
Not at all. The sources really highlight this fourth quarter comeback. They were down by 15 with about 9.5 minutes left, and they just kept chipping away. Got it down to a one-possession game really late, under a minute to go.
And then the finish. Crazy sequence. 22 seconds left. OKC is up by 110-109. And Rick Carlisle challenges an out-of-bounds call on Pascal Siakam.
Right, near the baseline. The challenge wasn't successful, so OKC kept the ball. But here's the crucial part, according to the sources. Carlisle consciously chose not to call a timeout right after that unsuccessful challenge.
Why was that so important?
Well, because it didn't let OKC set up their defense. Indiana could just grab the rebound off the ensuing missed shot, which SGA did miss, and push it immediately in transition. No time for OKC to get organized.
Okay. Catch him off guard.
Exactly. And that scramble leads directly to Tyrese Halliburton. He gets the ball, pulls up from about 21 feet. Drains the jumper right over Cason Wallace. Just 0.3 seconds left on the clock.
Unbelievable. And that was Indiana's first lead of the entire game.
First lead, all game. Snuck it right at the buzzer. Just incredible clutch play.
And the sources emphasize this isn't like a one-off thing for the Pacers this postseason.
No, not at all. This was apparently the fourth time in these playoffs alone where they came back to win a game when their opponent had like a 95% or higher win probability with under 3 minutes left.
That's insane. 4 times.
4 times. It speaks volumes about their late game execution, their belief. And the source specifically points out Halliburton had the game-tying or go-ahead basket in every single one of those comebacks.
Wow. So he's really delivering in those huge moments.
He really is. On the flip side, SGA had a chance just before that Halliburton shot, a mid-range jumper, but he missed. And then OKC's final lob attempt didn't work. Just a heartbreaker for them at home.
Okay, let's look at the box score heroes from Game 1. For OKC, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, despite the miss at the end, had a huge game offensively, right?
Oh, yeah. 38 points, led everybody. And one source put that in historical context. Third most points ever in an NBA Finals debut. Only Allen Iverson and George Mikan scored more. That's pretty elite company.
Definitely. Jalen Williams and Lou Dort chipped in, too, combined for 32. But what about Chet Holmgren? The sources mentioned he had a tougher time.
Yeah, reports suggest he struggled a bit in his first finals game. Only 6 points, shot 2 for 9, grabbed 6 rebounds. The feeling was maybe the moment, the physicality got to him a little.
And for the Pacers, who led the way for them?
Pascal Siakam had a really strong game, 19 points, 10 rebounds for a double-double. But the key thing the sources noted about Indiana's scoring in Game 1 was the balance. All 5 starters hit double figures.
That's their identity, right? Balanced scoring.
Exactly. Aaron Nesmith and Halliburton also had double-doubles. And Obi Toppin gave them a really nice lift off the bench, 17 points. That depth was crucial for them in Game 1.
And this loss for OKC, it was rare for them at home in the playoffs.
Yeah, only their second home loss of the entire postseason. The other one was also a Game 1 against Denver in the second round. So the Pacers cracked that home court advantage right away.
And that ESPN analytics stat you mentioned earlier, OKC had a 96.4% chance to win with under 3 minutes left.
Yep, 96.4% win probability with a 9-point lead and 2.52 remaining. Losing from that position, it just doesn't happen often. Shows you how well Indiana closed and maybe some questions about OKC's execution right at the end there.
Now, after that Game 1 loss, the sources mentioned some pretty direct criticism coming from scouts about certain Thunder players.
Yeah, particularly Jalen Williams. One scout was apparently pretty blunt, saying he needs to be an all-NBA guy, period. The feeling was that maybe OKC got away with him being a bit inefficient sometimes during their playoff run, not always taking enough pressure off Shy.
And the scout felt like in Game 1 that caught up to them.
That was the quote, yeah, caught up to them. Williams shot just 6 for 19, 1 for 4 from 3, finished with 17 points. And the scout apparently contrasted that with Andrew Nembhard for Indiana, saying Nembhard stepped up when Halliburton was off the ball, implying OKC needed that same kind of reliable second option from Williams.
What about Holmgren? More criticism there, too.
Yeah, similar theme. Sources said he looked sped up, that Indiana's physicality, especially Miles Turner's defense, maybe got him out of rhythm. The takeaway was he needed to adjust, and quickly.
And there's even a note about a specific play, a lane violation.
Yeah, one scout apparently called a lane violation against OKC in the fourth quarter a gift for Indiana, gave them an extra point in a game decided by 1 point. Just shows how every little thing matters at this level.
Absolutely. So Game 1, dramatic Pacers win on the road, clutch Halliburton, balanced scoring, and some questions raised about OKC's supporting cast.
Pretty much sums it up.
But okay, this Thunder team won 68 games. They weren't just going to roll over. How did they respond in Game 2?
They responded like a championship contender should, came back with a really dominant performance in Game 2, won at 123-107, tied the series 1-1. And fun fact from the sources, that was actually their first finals game win since way back in 2012, Game 1 against Miami.
Wow, it's been that long. So how did they establish control this time?
Unlike Game 1, they took charge pretty early and didn't let go. The key stretch was apparently in the second quarter. OKC went on this massive 19-2 run.
19-2, okay, that'll do it.
Yeah, that blew the game open. They jumped out to a 23-point lead.
Right.
And from that point on, Indiana just couldn't get it back to single digits. OKC really asserted themselves.
And Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Did he keep up his scoring pace?
Oh, absolutely. Followed up the 38 points with 34 in Game 2. So that's 72 points combined in his first 2 finals games.
72, that sounds like a lot.
It is. Historically significant, actually. According to the sources, that passed Allen Iverson's 71 points back in 2001 for the most points ever scored by a player in their first 2 finals games.
More history for SGA. Incredible.
Yeah, he's putting some serious numbers. He also apparently became just the 12th player ever to hit 3,000 combined points in a single regular season and playoffs.
And didn't he tie another record in Game 2? Something about home playoff games?
He did. It was his 9th straight home playoff game, scoring at least 30 points. That ties a record held by Wilt Chamberlain. Just unbelievable consistency scoring at home.
Wow. Wilt Chamberlain. Okay. But was it all Shai in Game 2, or did others step up more this time? Because that was the criticism after Game 1.
That's a great point. And the sources actually noted that OKC's offense was more balanced in Game 2. They became the first team since the 2019 Raptors to have 5 different players score 15 or more points in a finals game.
Ah, okay. So maybe a direct response to needing more guys to contribute.
Seems like it. Suggests they made that adjustment, spread the wealth a bit more effectively in Game 2.
And on the Pacers side, how did their scoring look in the loss?
Halliburton led them again, but only with 17 points. Miles Turner had 16, Siakam had 15. And here's a notable trend the sources picked up on. For the second straight game, no Pacer reached 20 points. They became the first team since the 2013 Heat to go 2 straight finals games without anyone hitting that 20-point mark.
Is that tough? Good or bad? Shows balance, but maybe they need someone to explode.
It's kind of the double-edged sword of their style, right?
Yeah.
Highlights the team approach, but yeah, maybe raises the question if they need that go-to individual scorer sometimes, especially when the offense bogs down.
And Coach Carlisle, was he pretty straightforward about the loss?
Yeah, reports say he was candid post-game, talked about a poor first half, lapses in execution being the key reasons they lost so decisively.
Okay, so Game 2 loss. And this apparently sparked some debate about Halliburton. The sources mentioned Stephen A. Smith questioning his superstar status.
Yeah, that became a talking point. Smith apparently argued that while Halliburton's clutch plays are obvious and amazing, you have to look at the whole game, the full 48 minutes when you're talking superstar.
What was his reasoning?
He talked about the offensive load, the burden that guys like Durant, LeBron, Steph carry consistently throughout the entire game. He acknowledged Halliburton's a young rising star, great in the clutch, but seemed to imply that maybe he doesn't carry that same constant weight for the full game yet.
And Halliburton's Game 2 performance maybe fueled that a bit?
Likely. The source noted he only had 5 points through the end of the third quarter in Game 2. So while he finished with 17, the scoring wasn't consistent throughout. It's, an ongoing debate about what defines that top tier of player.
Interesting. So 2 games down, series tied 1-1, heading to Indiana. What are the big picture storylines and strategic matchups the sources are telling us to watch for the rest of the way?
Well, number one, overwhelmingly, is the battle between Tyrese Halliburton and that Thunder defense. OKC's defense is described as just elite, maybe historically good. It's their calling card, swarming, slowed down, great offenses like Denver's.
So the big question is, how does Halliburton handle that pressure consistently? Can he run that efficient Pacers offense, keep turnovers low, unlike that first half of Game 1, generate good shots, keep OKC scrambling?
Exactly. And on the flip side, how does OKC choose to guard him? Do they sick Lou Dort, Cason Wallace, Alex Caruso on him full court, just try to wear him down? Do they deny him the ball once he gives it up? Or do they switch everything and basically dare him to beat guys like Holmgren or Hartenstein one-on-one?
Lots of options for OKC's defense.
Definitely. Each has pros and cons. One source put it really vividly, saying Halliburton basically needs a hyper-disciplined, impeccably precise out-of-body experience for Indy to win. That tells you the level of challenge he's facing.
Wow. Okay, so Halliburton versus the OKCD is huge. What else?
Another major theme is what one source called the great usage gap. This really gets at the core difference in how these two teams play offense, and it shows up starkly in the usage rate numbers.
Okay, explain usage rate quickly for folks.
Basically, it estimates the percentage of a team's offensive possessions that a player uses while they're on the floor, either by shooting, getting to the free throw line, or turning the ball over. Doesn't count assists directly, which is a limitation, but it shows who the offense runs through.
Got it. So Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's usage.
Through the roof, 34.8% in the regular season. The source notes that's the 44th highest in NBA history. We're talking James Harden in Houston territory. It's clear. The OKC offense flows almost entirely through SGA.
And the Pacers.
Complete opposite end of the spectrum. They were apparently the only team in the league this season with no one above 25% usage.
Yeah.
Siakam led them at just 24.2%. Then you had McConnell, Mathurin, even Halliburton himself, all clustered below that.
Halliburton was only at 21.6%, but he runs the offense.
Exactly. That's where the source points out the limitation of usage rate. It doesn't capture playmaking via assists very well. Halliburton's the engine, finished third in assists league-wide, but his usage rate was lower than Malik Beasley's, for example. Still, the overall team picture is clear. Indiana spreads the responsibility way, way more.
So the gap between SGA's usage and Siakam's, is that historically significant?
Apparently, yes. The source says it's the largest gap ever between the team usage leaders meeting in the NBA Finals. It's a fundamental clash. Styles make fights, right?
Absolutely. One team leans incredibly heavily on its superstar. The other relies on passes, movement, the power of friendship, as the source put it, to get easy looks.
And the history here is fascinating, too. According to the sources, no team has ever won a title relying this heavily on one guy's usage rate. Michael Jordan in '93 was just slightly lower than SGA.
Wow. So OKC is trying to do something almost unprecedented in terms of offensive concentration.
Pretty much. And on the flip side, the last champ whose leading usage guy was lower than Siakam's rate was Magic Johnson and the '88 Lakers. So winning Indiana's way is possible, but may be rarer in the modern era. It's going to be fascinating to see which style prevails.
Definitely a key battle to watch. What about the coaching matchup, Carlisle versus Atkinson?
Rick Carlisle gets a lot of attention in the sources for his history of defying expectations. There's an analysis going back to 1990 looking at playoff series odds, and Carlisle ranks 4th all-time in series wins over expected. He's behind only Phil Jackson, Rudy Tomjanovich, and Eric Spoelstra.
That's elite company.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the sources note if Carlisle pulls off the upset here against OKC, he'd actually jump to second place on that list, behind only Phil Jackson. Adds another layer to his reputation as someone who gets the most out of his teams, especially as an underdog.
And on the OKC side?
Well, you have Kenny Atkinson, who was actually named the 2024-25 Coach of the Year, and Sam Presti, their executive, one Executive of the Year. So, clear recognition for the job they've done building and coaching that team this season.
Right. And that Thunder defense keeps coming up, swarming, slowing down the Nuggets.
It's central to their identity, ties right back into that Halliburton matchup. The coaching chess match, how Carlisle tries to free up Halliburton, how Atkinson counters will be huge.
Okay, let's drill down on the specific players the sources are telling us to keep a close eye on for the rest of the series.
Yeah, got to start with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, obviously. He's the engine, the MVP candidate. His dominance through 2 games, the records he's setting, it's incredible. The question is, can he keep up this historic efficiency against whatever adjustments Indiana throws at him? Can he carry that huge load for potentially 4 or 5 more games?
Then for Indiana, it's Tyrese Halliburton, the playmaker, the engine for their offense. We know about the clutch gene, the game 1 winner, the history of big shots. Can he navigate that intense OKC perimeter defense? Dort, Wallace, Caruso.
And can he, maybe, elevate his scoring consistently across the full 48 minutes? Address those questions raised after Game 2. His playmaking is vital, but how he handles the pressure and finds his own offense will be key. Remember, he was an All-NBA third-team guy this year, too.
Pascal Siakam for Indiana feels critical too. Leads them in usage, actually. Had that big double-double in Game 1. MVP votes this season as well.
Yeah, his ability to just go get a bucket when things break down or when Halliburton's being blanketed, that feels really important for them. He provides that different dimension to their balanced attack.
Yeah, back to OKC. Jalen Williams. He seems like the X factor, the guy they need to be that second star consistently.
Absolutely. The sources hammered that point after Game 1. The scouts calling for him to be All-NBA guy, take pressure off Shai. How does he respond? Does he find that efficiency, that assertiveness game after game? His performance feels crucial for OKC's ceiling.
And Chet Holmgren, the young big man. Had those struggles in Game 1 looked maybe a bit sped up?
Yeah, watching his adjustment is huge. How does he handle Miles Turner's physicality and timing? Can he impose himself more offensively and defensively as the series goes on? His growth within this series could be a major swing factor.
Alex Caruso also gets a mention.
Yeah, mainly for his defense, obviously. Key guy for OKC trying to slow down Halliburton and other perimeter players. Had that positive plus say early in Game 1, shows his impact. The MVP race mentioned was probably just highlighting his defensive value this season.
And then for Indiana, it's not just one guy. It's that whole supporting cast, right? Turner, Nesmith, Toppin, McConnell, and Nembhard.
Exactly. The sources keep coming back to Indiana's depth and balance. All 5 starters in double figures in Game 1. Toppin's bench scoring. Nembhard stepping up when needed. Turner's defense on Holmgren. The fact no one hit 20 points might be a feature, not a bug. But can that collective depth consistently outperform OKC's top-heavy star power, especially Shai's brilliance? That's the core question.
Okay, let's switch gears slightly and look at some of the betting trends the sources pulled out. Again, this isn't advice, just historical context and patterns.
Right. So looking back at Game 1, OKC was apparently a big home favorite, maybe as much as 9 points. And they were seen as overwhelming favorites to win the series before it started. So Indiana winning Game 1 on the road was a significant upset against those expectations.
And historically, when a road team wins Game 1 of the finals,
It's actually split right down the middle. Happened 18 times before. The road team went 9-9 in those series. So the source says it's far from over, but obviously much better odds for Indy than if they'd lost Game 1. Reportedly only a 22.4% historical chance if they'd lost Game 1 on the road.
interesting. What about general finals trends?
Home teams, maybe surprisingly, haven't been great bets against the spread recently, covering only about 51% of the time since 2014. Favorites, though, have been doing better lately, 14-8-1 against the spread in the last 23 finals games.
And that winners cover trend sounds really strong.
Yeah, it's remarkable. Over the last 61 finals games, the team that won the game straight up also covered the point spread like 95% of the time. If you win, you usually win by enough to cover.
What about totals? Over or under?
Leaning under lately. 24 of the last 36 finals games went under the total, including an 8-game under streak leading into this series. Also, those big home favorites, like OKC might have been in Game 1, have actually been good bets against the spread historically. 21-10-2 ATS since 2013, if favored by 4.5 plus.
Any trends based on how a team played the last game?
Yeah, a couple of counterintuitive ones. Teams that shot really poorly, under 41.5% in their last finals game, tend to struggle again the next one, only 7-14 straight up in ATS. But also, teams that shot the lights out from 3, 47% plus in their last game, also tend to regress and perform poorly against the spread in the next game, only 4-14 1 ATS. So hot shooting doesn't always carry over smoothly.
Okay, now for the specific games coming up in Indiana, Game 3, there's a trend here.
Yeah, really interesting one. The source calls a momentum squelcher.
Yeah.
In the last 10 NBA finals, the team that won Game 2, which was OKC this year, has actually struggled quite a bit in Game 3, going just 4-8 straight up and against the spread.
Only 4-8 after winning Game 2? That seems backward.
It does, and apparently those 8 losses were almost all blowouts, double-digit margins. So history suggests OKC might face an uphill battle in Game 3. despite having just one.
What about Game 4, also in Indiana?
Home teams have struggled in Game 4s recently, just 3-8 straight up and against the spread since 2013. And specifically, if the home team won Game 3, they've been a really bad bet in Game 4, 1-4 SUETs, often losing big even when favored.
And Game 4s tend to be lower scoring.
Yeah, the source notes average points drop significantly compared to the first 3 games. Defensive fatigue may be set in. 10 of the last 11 Game 4s have gone under the total.
And later in the series, Games 5-7?
Momentum seems to matter more then. Teams coming off a big double-digit win tend to carry it over, 8-4-1 ATS. But if it gets to a Game 6 elimination situation, teams facing elimination have really struggled against the spread, 1-6 ATS since 2013.
Okay, lots of interesting historical patterns there. Now, one of the sources actually made a specific prediction for this series outcome.
It did. The prediction laid out in the source material is Indiana Pacers win the series, 4-2, and it specifically calls for the Pacers to win Game 3.
Okay, Pacers in 6, winning Game 3. How does that line up with the trends we just talked about?
Well, it fits perfectly with that Game 3 momentum sculpture trend, right? OKC won Game 2. The trend says the Game 2 winner often loses Game 3. This prediction has Indiana, the Game 2 loser, winning Game 3. So it follows that historical pattern.
And why might this prediction Pacers in 6 make sense based on everything else we've discussed from the sources?
You could build a case, right? You look at Indiana's depth, their balanced scoring, their proven clutch performance, Carlisle's history of overachieving. Maybe you bet on that collective strength wearing down OKC over 6 games. Maybe OKC's heavy reliance on Shai, or the potential inconsistencies from Williams or Holmgren that scouts noted in Game 1 become bigger issues as the series wears on.
So it's kind of a bet on Indiana's team concept winning out over OKC's superstar-centric approach in the long run.
That seems to be the logic behind that specific prediction, yeah. But of course, you absolutely have to weigh OKC's strengths. Shai is playing at an all-time level. Their defense is elite. They were dominant in Game 2, 68 wins. It's definitely not a foregone conclusion. But that's the prediction one source put out there.
And if the Pacers did win it all as a 4 seed?
That would be pretty historic. The source notes they'd be the lowest-seeded champ in 30 years, going back to Hakeem Olajuwon and the 6th-seeded Rockets in 1995.
Wow. Okay, so looking ahead to the rest of the series, what are the main things we should be watching for?
It really comes back to those core battles. Can Halliburton solve the OKC defense? How does that great usage gap play out? Can Indiana's balance sustain, or does Shai just overwhelm them? Which role players on either side consistently step up?
And coaching adjustments, game to game.
Huge. Carlisle versus Atkinson, tweaking strategies, making counters. That chess match will be critical. The series is tied 1-1. It feels wide open, despite maybe OKC being seen as heavy favorites coming in. Indiana's proven they belong.
Finally, the sources touched on the discussion around TV ratings for the finals.
Yeah, it was noted that Game 2 viewership was reportedly down, lowest since the bubble finals in 2020.
But there's context to that.
Right. The sources also point out that the NBA's big broadcast deals are locked in for a long time, like through 2035-36. So from a purely financial standpoint for the league itself, maybe lower ratings in one series aren't an immediate crisis.
But it's still something fans are talking about.
Definitely. The sources capture that some fans see it as a sign of, maybe declining relevancy, or maybe they have issues with the product itself. Things like flopping complaints or accusations of referee bias, specifically mentioning perceptions of bias towards OKC and Shai. These are points raised in the fan discourse surrounding the series, as reflected in the sources.
Just adds another layer to the whole narrative around this unexpected finals matchup.
It does.
Okay, so just to quickly wrap up what we've pulled from all these sources. We've looked at how this unlikely finals pairing came together through that wild Paul George trade history. We've broken down the drama and the key takeaways from Games 1 and 2. We've analyzed that fundamental clash in offensive styles with the usage gap, highlighted the crucial players to watch, and even looked at some fascinating historical betting trends that add context.
Yeah, and hopefully digging into all these different angles, the history, the stats, the strategies, the player matchups, the trends, gives you a much richer way to watch and appreciate the rest of this series, beyond just who won or lost each game.
Exactly. And as you settle in to watch Games 3, 4, and beyond, here's that final thought to chew on, something to consider based on everything we've discussed. Given this really stark contrast, we've seen Oklahoma City leaning so heavily on a high-usage superstar in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander versus Indiana's incredibly balanced, team-first, equitable offensive attack. What does this specific NBA Finals matchup, no matter who lifts the trophy in the end, tell us about the best way, or maybe the different ways, to build a championship contender in the NBA today?
It's a great question. Something to definitely think about as we see how this fascinating series plays out.